Hello, and welcome to another installment of Astrology versus Psychology. Today we're looking at PTSD out of the DSM-5, and then also what astrology has to say about it. And I'm here joined by Angela Yuriko-Smith.
Hi.
And we are going to kind of deep dive into what causes somebody to hold on to these traumas and be unable to maybe process them. And I will say that coming into this, I expected to see scorpionic energy. But the more that I looked into it and thought about it, the scorpionic energy will tend to transmute trauma, not stay in it like PTSD does. So I think there's something to be learned here about leaning into that scorpionic energy, which will be things like therapy, right? It's learning to look at it from a different way and not let it control you. So I was pleasantly, or I don't know if pleasantly is the word, I was surprised, put it that way. So I'm going to pull up what the DSM-5 has to say about this, because it has quite a bit to say on the official disorder. Let me just share the screen with you guys. But I wanted to say that 11th House Publishing is now officially a 501c3 as of a couple days ago. We got our letter. And
Hey, congratulations.
so this allows us to be tax deductible for donations and to move ahead with a number of things. So it's a very exciting time for us. Thank you for everybody who has participated in fundraising efforts and just believed in us, shared things, been supportive in any way. I really appreciate it. It's okay. In order for you to meet the diagnostic criteria, it has to be something that stays with you and substantially affects your life, right? So you go through some trauma and you have a hard time processing it, or it keeps popping back up. Exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence in one or more of the following ways: directly experiencing the event, witnessing it happening to somebody else, learning that the traumatic event occurred to somebody who's very close to you. You can kind of vicariously live through that, and experiencing repeated or extreme exposure to aversive details of the traumatic events. They give the example of first responders collecting human remains, police officers repeatedly exposed to details of child abuse, etc. And they'll often go through therapy themselves. So I should have also put like a trigger warning. Maybe I'll do that in the beginning on this, but it should be given maybe. All right, the presence of one or more of the following intrusion symptoms associated with traumatic event. In children 6 years or older, repetitive play may occur in which themes or aspects of the trauma are expressed. So again, in all of these things, I also was expecting to see water, the element of water. So the Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio aspects, the 12th house, the 4th house, the 8th house, all of that deals with memory and holding on to and retaining these things, rather than just the fire signs will burn right through it and be like, psh, whatever. But the water retains the memory and might have a harder time letting go. The earth signs can also hold on to it. So I'm not going to say it's not there, but it's less likely to destabilize their lives, because that earth energy will ground it out and kind of not allow it to, whereas the water will be more emotional, and that's a lot of what we see in the DSM-5 is dealing with emotions in some way or another as being problematic. So they have their own book, really. So you might have recurrent or distressing dreams, which is a very Piscean thing, the dream realm, and dissociative reactions or flashbacks in which individuals feel or act out the traumatic event again. So that's tracking in with the whole Piscean 12th house imagination, right? So we as writers use that, tap into that for a creation aspect. But if it's in a lower frequency, you can tap into some of these, well, now I can't get out of that loop of imagining it over and over and over again. So there's an aspect here of learning to raise up that frequency that you're living in with this, maybe processing it through your art, and you see this with art therapy as a thing. Whether it's painting something or writing out your story just to get it up and out of the mind so it's not continually on a loop. And I'm doing this, and I know that this is like the crazy symbol, right? It's like, oh, yeah, you're nuts. Well, it's that loop, maybe. That's where it came from. So intense or prolonged psychological distress at exposure or exposure to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic event. Marked physiological reactions to internal or external cues. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much saying the same thing, only long-winded. Avoidance of efforts to avoid distressing memories, thoughts, or feelings about or closely associated with the traumatic event. That's interesting. So yeah, it's like not even wanting to see it. So C deals with like, I don't even want to look at whatever it is to be able to heal it in the first place. Like, la, 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 there's no problem here. And so that becomes really problematic because if you don't acknowledge there's a problem, you can't begin to heal it. Like the scorpionic energy will tend to be like, okay, this is a problem. It's affecting me. I want to get control of this. Let's change it. Whereas the Piscean energy will be more like, it's like the fish, right? It swims away. It's like, I'm not dealing with that. Off I go into escapistville, whether that's drugs or alcohol in the lower levels. You might get writing, books, stories, movies in the middle level. And then the highest level of this is that godlike love, and spirituality, and that acceptance that we're all one. And that can be extremely healing, I think, to this kind of energy as well, a pathway out from being stuck in that loop. All right, so the inability to remember an important aspect of the trauma. So again, that's the avoidance of whatever it is, persistent and exaggerated negative beliefs or expectations about oneself, others. So you can get into the victim mentality, right? I'm bad, no one can be trusted, the world is completely dangerous, my whole nervous system is permanently ruined. Like it's oh my God, this has affected me and there's nothing I can do, right? And that the victim mentality is the lower end of Pisces energy. It's feeling overwhelmed and put upon by life in general. And it's because they tend to be very sensitive too. So they're the ones that are going to take this stuff in and hold on to it. There's a lack of boundaries between themselves and whatever the traumatic event is. So it's almost like, well, did I deserve this? It could be part of that. Or they just feel, again, going back to the close family members, they feel what they've been through very acutely as if they've done it themselves. And we've talked about this with stories in general being an avenue of experiencing something without actually experiencing it. And that's where reading somebody else's trauma or horror in general can help people process through things. So if you've been through something traumatic, rather than avoid it, if you can get to the point of I'm going to look at this thing head on and learn everything I can about it, then reading about how somebody else has gone through and processed it can be extremely helpful. Okay, persistent, distorted cognitions about the cause or consequences of the traumatic events that lead the individual to blame himself or others. Persistent negative emotional states. They're always in fear, always in horror, and they get stuck there in that loop. And you got to kind of snap them out of it. Markedly diminished interest in or participation in significant activities. It's like it becomes their entire world. Instead of it being like a delusion that maybe can help them, hold a vision of a dream. Like in the higher end of it, Pisces is very good at that. It's like, I want this wonderful thing to happen, so I'm going to hold on to that and make it my reality. Well, the same is true in the inverse then. I'm going to hold on to this. And then that becomes their world. Then it all becomes negative, until they can raise that up in various ways. So yes, markedly diminished interest in, okay, I already did that. Feelings of detachment or estrangement from others. Again, it's that avoidance, swimming away from the issue, persistent inability to experience positive emotions. It's like water. If you think about water and you just pour in something nasty and funky, it's going to eventually, even the oceans, like they're not absolutely infinite. You got the the plastic mounds within them, right? It's the same sort of thing. Like if there's too much negativity constantly surrounding them, and like attracts like, this is why people with Piscean energy really have to be careful who they hang around with, because they're like sponges. They soak that up. And what's that saying? Misery loves company. It's there for a reason. But the inverse is true. So if you know that, then try hanging out someplace that's a little bit lighter in energy. My family can have irritable behavior, angry outbursts, reckless or destructive behavior, be hypervigilant to things, have an exaggerated startle response. Well, if you're constantly feeling like in your nervous system and your whole being, your whole emotional self is feeling like you're still there in the threat at all times, you're going to hyperreact. So that makes sense. Kind of speaks to the Uranian energy too, with the nervous system aspects. Sleep disturbance. They often have difficulty falling or staying asleep. Again, you can understand why. If they're still living whatever it is, they don't feel safe ever. And problems with concentration. It has to last more than 1 month. The disturbance causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social situations. Yes. And it can't be attributable to any particular substance, although these people will oftentimes be on something, right? Self-medication, whether that's drugs, alcohol, etc. Yeah, so then you have dissociative symptoms, again, not wanting to deal with reality is basically it. And you can understand why, because the trauma happened, either no, that didn't, or I'm gonna look at it this way and refuse to take it at face value. However that comes out, the individual is experiencing an unreal, dreamlike, distant or distorted portion of reality, which is totally Piscean 12th house energy, 1000%. They're like, nope. And no amount of getting, of trying to get through this bubble will happen unless they want it to happen. They have to kind of tap into that flow to decide. You can try to help entice them, maybe bait, like you're fishing, but just something to keep in mind. And the full diagnostic criteria are not met until at least 6 months after the event, although the onset of expression of some symptoms may be immediate. And this kind of jives with, if you don't want to deal with the fact that it happened. So it's like, oh, okay, that happened. I can't process that right now. So off it goes into the ether until it creeps back up, So that's interesting that they make that allowance. Oh, and there we go. Wow. So when I went into this thinking that I was going to find a lot of Plutonian scorpionic energy, but what I actually found was that Piscean. And of course, as soon as I pulled all these celebrity charts, I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it's written all over them. It's that whole, I'm holding on to it. So in Shia LaBeouf's case, he's pretty well known as having PTSD. Yeah, he's a Pisces ascendant, essentially. So he's right on the cusp here at 29 degrees. With technically he's Aquarius, but if you sneeze, he's into Pisces. Pretty much. He's very, very close. And so he double dips into both of these energies with Jupiter in Pisces too. So it's giving that very sensitive nature, but then he's also got that Aquarian energy of doing his own thing, going his own way. So there's very much this push-pull between this energy of being logical and being super hyper emotional. And it can go back and forth, like almost feeling like it doesn't make sense to show my emotions to this degree. Pisces energy tends to make great actors, by the way, just because they can mirror and mimic anything out and back to them. So very imaginative, very creative energy. But there it is, very prominently as well. And Mick Jagger came up, and I was interested too, because he's, here's Jupiter, which is the ruler of Pisces. So that's why I bring that up. Conjunct his sun, so the soul. So that's going to be that holding on to and kind of wearing it as a part of his identity, the things that he's been through. Maybe not wanting to give it up all that easily. But in his case, he actually, in the higher end of this, you can transmute it through your creations, right? So in his case, through his music, which is a very Piscean thing. And he's got Pluto, that empowerment principle, the transmutation, the phoenix energy. Like, yeah, we've been through this PTSD level events, but let's do something with it. And not only did he do that, but he brought it out in a healing way to others. There's so many Rolling Stone songs that just really empower people, So that stuck out to me as being very significant. He also was very neurodivergent with all of this Gemini, Uranian energy too is an aside. And his moon, which is the emotions, and Mars are both in his 12th house of Taurus. So that's a doubling down of that. That Mars energy tends to be determined though, and it's like, I'm not going to wallow in this victimhood and stay here forever. I'm going to do something about it. And here we have Ariana Grande. She's came up in the famous people for having PTSD. Ariana Grande is, as I understand it, she had like a bomb go off in one of her concerts and then spoke about how it really kept, like she couldn't let it go, and you've got, it's
Yeah, I
understandable.
did not know that. I can see that. Like, yes, I do not want to let that go. I'm going to keep thinking about that, but I never knew that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and she's got Jupiter here with her moon. Boom, boom. Very, very close. And so in astrology, the closer something is, or the more spot on the aspect, the more impactful the energy is. Let's put it that way. So whereas you could have somebody with Jupiter with their moon, 8 degrees away, and it's not, they might not hold on to it to the extent of letting it get to them in a way that, now she's on these lists as having PTSD and being treated for it. It might still affect them and they might hold on to it, but not as acutely to affect the everyday. Does that make sense? So
Absolutely.
yeah, and I mean, she's got her moon in Libra too, and Libra wants nice, harmonious things, does not want to have to deal with trauma at all. It's like the last thing that it wants. So I think, she worked on it, and if she can process it into her music, that would be a good thing, or a higher belief, or that this happened for a reason and what she might be able to do with it going forward. you know, whether that being a spokesperson or understanding, because this is empath energy at the end of the day. Can I understand the motives of the person or the thing that hurt me? And then come at it with compassion rather than fear. That's at the end of the day what this is. And the Pisces energy, I should say, is all 12 signs rolled into one. It's the ocean of all of them. So it absolutely has the ability to tap into any of these energies at any point. It's like a superpower. But it can be overwhelming, right? It's all 12 of them stuffed into one sign. So, you know, if you've been suffering from any of this stuff, give yourself a moment to breathe and understand that you're human and that you're here trying to process a lot of stuff at a really gnarly time. So take it one day, one step at a time. Focus on what you can control. Focus on feeling here and in the moment. Be with your tea for a moment if you need to. Like, it really is the little steps that can help get you up and out of these things, in addition to therapy and, you know, getting it out in these artistic ways. And then Alanis Morissette also came up, you know, and she's had a pretty gnarly life herself. We get Jupiter here in Pisces for her. In this case, we have what's called a square to her sun. So 15 and 10 degrees. So she was able to like work through it through her music and stuff, and she didn't let it get her down. But she's also got Saturn here conjunct Mercury. So this is very much a taking control of the higher mind and not allowing, like, basically learning what you can over whatever it is. And not allowing it to have control over your thoughts is what I would say. So in the lower end, this can be constant fear in your thoughts. But on the higher end, well, no, I'm not going to let this rule me. And so I think she channeled that, and this is all in her 12th house as well of Cancer. So, and that Mars is there as well. So that's saying that we do have this aspect of holding on to the trauma in her soul. But then there's part of her that's like, no, I'm going to make life what I decide to make it, you know, and grow from this and help through her music, you know, other people find their way. So it's a beautiful thing. Right, and that's the ones that I have. On a personal note for me, I've been through quite a lot of things in my life. And I do have a lot in my 12th house. I have Jupiter on my moon, but it's not like a super tight conjunction. But I also have Saturn. So I have both of these energies. And I have a lot of Scorpio. And so I was always like, okay, this sucks, but I'm not going to let it control me. And so where there's that propensity to go into drugs and alcohol and that lure on the one side, on my other side, it was always like, that seems like it's given this substance control over my life in a way that I don't like. You know, I see it happening to the people around me. And I don't like where that's going. We won't go down that aspect. But that didn't mean that I didn't lose myself in my books and my writing, you know. It's just a different way of processing it. So I kind of have a little, like, I didn't get a diagnosis of PTSD, but I can understand the energy on this and like the how hard it can be to let some of this stuff go and not let it define you. What comes to mind for me is that Moana song, you know, at the end when she's talking to Fidi. You know, if you haven't seen that scene, I suggest going and looking it up. I'll even put it below, I think. So it can be incredibly empowering about not letting your trauma rule your life and dictate who you are. It's separating yourself from that trauma and realizing that the world doesn't have to be this dangerous place all the time, that there's good in it too, and that you can be that good. And so there's the higher form of the Piscean energy is, again, that godlike, well, that spiritual path. So that can be a way out of the fear that the PTSD keeps people stuck in, is, they go towards the light. Whatever that might be, spirituality is a highly personal thing. And it should be. It's a personal journey. But basically, if you don't know what to do, do the next thing that feels right in your soul, right in your heart, and then go from there. If you're in dark times right now. So I hope that this helps somebody. I'm Nikki. I don't think I said I'm terrible at doing that at the beginning of these videos. I'm Nikki with 11th House Publishing. If this did help you, press the like button, share, put a comment below. Or if you disagree or have seen something else in your chart, I'm always open and interested to look at these things. And then Angela is here with Authortunities. It's a algorithm-free author community and creative community on the Mighty Network. So it's like off of Facebook, off of Twitter, off of all these things. It's a nice, safe haven from the chaos, as it were, and very supportive.
Yeah, I agree. It's a refuge. I find it a refuge.
Yes. So if you would like to join us there, every Wednesday we'll go live with this, taking a look at a different thing from the DSM-5 and how it merges with astrology. So we'd love to have you join the discussion, and it's usually live around 6:30 p.m. Central Time on Wednesdays. And if there's nothing else, Angela, did you have anything else?
No, just that was super interesting. I like how you brought up horror as, horror writers representative, I guess, of how horror also helps us to process that and transmute it. So I think we're in the right spot. We're doing the right thing where we need to be right now.
Exactly. That's one of the greatest compliments that I ever got on my book, was that it helped somebody process some things that they didn't realize were issues. But then seeing them through my main character's eyes, they found it to be incredibly healing. Because sometimes we do just need to be understood, especially the empaths of the world who tend to understand everybody around them, but not be understood themselves. So the gift of reading somebody else's perspective can feel like that, I think. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us, and I will see you next time.
Bye.